Sanchez, and welcome to Sonoma Views, where we talk real estate, property management, restaurant reviews, what's going on in Sonoma County, and everything in between. Today's topic is on property management, landlording, and the landlord-tenant relationship. More specifically, talking about leases versus rental agreements. And I'll get into a deeper discussion on the pros and cons of a lease versus a month-to-month rental. However, I just had a interesting situation right now, and just yesterday and then recently as well. We're coming into peak moving season. So right now it is April 2019. So we're in spring, and then we're chugging into summer. And this is the time that the lease renewals. A lot of people who moved in last year on a 1-year lease are coming up. Their leases are expiring. So right now we are, me and my company, we're going through a lot of files, a lot of properties right now, rental units, and looking at, okay, what's the current rental amount? Do we increase the rent or not? We're checking the market rates, see if it makes sense to do rental increases or not. And then because the leases are coming to an end, sorry, kind of I normally flow, it kind of stuck on words. Maybe I need the French roast, here to lube it up. So yeah, so you have lease expirations that are coming up, and then also the renter's insurance. So that's another topic, another video for renter's insurance. That's so good. French roast. So one of the questions that happens, tenants sometimes want to hunker down, so to speak, renew their lease, not leave. They want to stay in that rental unit longer term. They don't want to move. So then they proactively ask, hey, are we going to be able to renew the lease? And then obviously at the end of that 1-year term, it's that unknown. Is the rent going to stay the same, or is it going to be increased? Is it going to go down? Not likely, but it does happen. It has happened. So a smart landlord will adjust to the market rents in order to keep the unit filled, meaning not have a vacancy. So that's a smart move. And there are I've seen it happen by more experienced landlords, and also the people who could afford it. Let's just face it, it's a money decision. They would be dropping the rent by $100 is literally a pay cut to the landlord. So not many landlords are willing to do that. So anyhow, so those are the conversations that we're having right now. It's okay, your lease is coming to an end. Me as a property manager, what I often recommend, most often I should say, is renewing a lease for 1 year. Whether or not we increase the rental amount, that's a separate item. Yes, it comes into play, but I'm more looking for the opportunity to keep the unit filled, and there's a number of reasons for that. Sometimes the tenants they don't want to commit. The initial commitment was for 12 months, 1 year. Sometimes we do leases for 18 months or 24 months, 2 years. So there's a commitment period on both sides between the tenant and the landlord. But when it comes up to the end of the year, we generally check in, because I do property inspections and I go through and before the year is up and kind of get a feeler. Hey, how's the unit working for you? How's the neighborhood? Or if it's a condo or townhouse, how's the association? What's it like here? Is it working out for you? Do you plan to stick around? And then I fill in the tenant as well. I let them know, hey, as of today, I don't have instructions. I don't have any warning or notice that the property is going to be sold. So I let them know what the plans are going into the second year, or the expectations, just so that they know, because face it, a lot of landlords sell investment properties, and with the property values being as high as they are, it makes sense for the real estate investors to cash out. Either cash out and go blow the money, have fun, or cash out and reinvest that money with reinvest it into another piece of income property. So that would be a 1031 exchange, and that is a different topic as well. I'm actually have one in the works right now. So I let the tenants know what the plans are for the property. If I do know that they're going to get a rental increase, then I'll just let them know, hey, going into the second year, the rent's going to go up by $100, as an example, and we would like to extend your lease and lock it in. So kind of probe proactively, but then sometimes you just get the tenant who does not want to stick around for the second year, and that's fine. You know, they met their 1 year obligation and they ask. So it's all a matter of communication at this point. And they might say, hey, you know, either maybe there's a boyfriend or girlfriend in the scenario, maybe there's a potential job change on the horizon, and like, God, if they commit to this, or they're tied down to a lease and they might not be able to jump on other opportunities. So those are the things that I see. Or sometimes the girl gets pregnant, and okay, they're in a 1-bedroom apartment and are pregnant or trying to get pregnant. Now I really want to be able to look for a 2-bedroom unit, you know, get extra space. So a lot of different things. I just got one where there's a young lady who is going to be going to school, or out of the area. So they're communicating in advance and saying, hey, you know, I prefer to be on a month-to-month. So at that point, what I do is just relay that information back to the landlord. Ultimately, it's the owner's decision whether or not to allow it. So there's pros and cons in that scenario, because now it's decision is on us, what we're going to do on our end. My personal preference is no. I take that back. It's my thought process is sort of a flow chart, if-then scenario. So you have, okay, tenant says, I don't want to renew the lease. They request to stay on a month-to-month. Okay, and I just did a couple of these. So like, okay, so if the tenant asks this, then I go one of two ways. Do we like the tenant? Meaning, have they been responsible? Have they maintained the property in good condition? Have they maintained it clean? Do they have good payment history? And this is most of my tenants anyway. So the answer is more than often, overwhelmingly, yes. They're good. We don't have a problem. We would rather keep them. So that's why I encourage the lease renewal, because it's another commitment for a 12-month period. But if they don't, then it's a roll of the dice, if you will. And right now, I approach it seasonally. All right. Now, again, we're in April. So thinking about that flow chart as well, sort of if something happens, what are the possible outcomes? So one, the first thing I do is, are they good tenants? Do I like them? Do I want to keep them? You know, great. So if we want to keep them, then what I would do is do a counter offer, which is, okay, what are the plans? When do you plan to leave? If you can't commit to a year, let's do a 6-month lease. Okay, get a commitment. There's more value to us to have a commitment. Now, the fact that we're in spring is to our benefit, and I'll explain that. So first I would go back and say, okay, let's do a 6-month lease. Since you don't know what you're going to be doing, we need a commitment. I don't want that place to be on a month-to-month. Now, the reason I, landlord, property manager, do not want to keep a unit on a month-to-month basis is because the tenant could give us a 30-day notice to move out at any time. All right. Thankfully, we're in the prime season, peak season. So if the tenant did not renew the lease and they are on a month-to-month and they decided that they want to move out, they just give us a 30-day notice, and now we have a vacancy 1 month later. I am not so much concerned with that happening now, because we're in April, we're heading into May. However, if we were in October, Halloween season, or we're in middle of November and now it's raining and it's cold and it gets dark at 4 o'clock, 4:30 p.m. and it's nasty and it sucks and nobody, it's cold. It's not the best time to show places. It's not the easiest time to get places rented. Now, in Sonoma County, we're always going to rent places year round. However, there's going to be fewer people looking. I will have to adjust the prices down, or the rent price down, and potentially it may take longer to rent. So it's just off-peak season. So if that happened, I look at the season. And then now the other thing for consideration, again, no right or wrong answer, just different options to take, is, all right, well, there's going to be a premium because the benefit in this case is to the tenant, not the landlord. So let's just say, for simple numbers, the 2-bedroom condo is rented at $2,000 rent. All right, they've been on a lease, which means that by law, by contract, we have not been able to kick the tenants out or increase the rent. So that's a lease, it's a commitment. And that's the benefit of having a lease. It's a mutual agreement between the two parties. But then once it rolls over to a month-to-month, the tenant is no longer bound by contract and they can leave at any time. Well, that also frees up the landlord to increase the rental amount or change the terms of the lease, whatever that may be. As an example, garbage has been included in the rent under the lease, but now, cost of garbage went up. So now the landlord, with a 30-day change of terms, 30-day notice, change of terms, because it's month to month, we're now renting it 30 days at a time. After 30 days, garbage will be paid by tenant, as an example. Or we had one situation, it was kind of weird, extreme, but it happened. They were on a month-to-month term, and the landlord moved into one of the units. It was a multi-unit property, fourplex, and the landlord needed to use the 2-car garage, which belonged to one of those units that we had rented out to a tenant. So, month to month, that's the way it goes, 30 days at a time. Gave the tenant notice. After 30 days, you will need to vacate, move out of the garage, and the garage space will be used by the landlord. So ultimately she left, but that's a month to month. All right. So getting back to my point, there is more benefit to a tenant to be on a month-to-month term after a fixed term lease. So therefore, what I would do is do a rental increase, because now again, this is before you go crazy and throw tomatoes at me. Based on what the rent amount is, and based on what that increase amount and percentage amount would be, because we're still under rent control. So based on your location, check state and local and city ordinances and see what the rules are in your area. I'm in Sonoma County and we're still under rent control during the emergency state of emergency following the the wildfires of October 2017. So that being said, if let's say we're into the second year and have not done any rental increase, then I might go up by $100, or possibly $150, maybe even $200, so that there is a compensation to offset the ability. It's a month-to-month option that the tenant now has. So if they're not giving us a guaranteed fixed term, then they should pay, in my opinion, a higher rent amount with that month-to-month option. So sort of A, B scenario. You present the either or. Like, okay, we're asking to renew the lease and possibly renew the lease with no rental increase. All right. So pros and cons. If you commit to 1 more year, no rental increase. Everything remains the same. Good. However, if you cannot commit to that lease, then do a month-to-month option and do a rental increase for, say, $100. It should come out to about 5%, in my opinion, and it could be up to 10% currently. It just depends what the landlord, the investor, actually wants to do, but 5%. If you're at a $2,000 rental and you go up by $100, that is a 5% increase, because $100 is 5% of $2,000. $200 would be 10% increase. So again, just gives you a frame of mind there. Hopefully I addressed that. There's no right answer. There's just different solutions. You could offer a 6-month renewal, or you could increase the rent. Or if you don't like the tenant, which is the second part of the flow chart, like, okay, they want to go month to month and they don't want to commit to another lease, they don't want to renew, and we're in peak season, either or. It's like if they have not been the best of tenants, if they've been late on their rent, they have not kept the place up, they haven't cleaned it, at that point I would just decide, okay, it's time to find new tenants. So okay, yes, you could remain on a month to month, and then what I would do is probably give them a 60-day notice to move out. So either or, depending on what the objectives are of the landlord. Do you want that place vacant, or do you want to keep the tenants and make more money every month? Sometimes it's better just to start over, get a tenant out, and then get the lease that you want while we're still in peak season, because if it's vacant during the month of May or June, we're going to have a lot more tenants who are available to fill that vacancy. I'm out of time. I'm Chris Sanchez. This is Sonoma Views. Thanks for watching.